Once upon a very official morning, America built an immigration obstacle course out of velvet ropes, metal detectors, courthouse folders, bus tickets, border signs, and one tiny clipboard with the emotional range of a parking meter. The sign over the gate said, "Welcome to the process." Under it, in smaller letters, it said, "Please have already completed the process before approaching the process." Oh dear. Into this tiny clay course walked a family-shaped set of paper dolls, a city hall puppet, a border agent puppet, a judge puppet, and a very loud policy cannon labeled "Enforcement." Nobody agreed where the starting line was. That was the first obstacle. In January 2025, President Donald Trump began his second term by signing executive orders aimed at a broad immigration crackdown. The orders directed federal agencies toward tougher border enforcement, expanded detention and removal priorities, and pressure on places described as sanctuary jurisdictions. That is the official version of the first hurdle. The fable version is that someone placed a giant foam wall in the middle of the miniature country and called it an administrative update. The wall immediately asked for 3 forms of ID, 2 court dates, and a password nobody had been issued. Then came the sanctuary city seesaw. Sanctuary policies do not have one single legal definition, but they generally limit how much local police or city agencies cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Supporters say those limits help immigrant residents report crimes and use public services without fear. The administration says some of those policies obstruct federal law enforcement. So the tiny seesaw began. One side wore a city hall sash and said, "Local trust." The other side wore a federal badge and said, "National enforcement." Both sides brought lawyers because this playground had a billable hour sandbox. In 2025, the Justice Department sued several jurisdictions over sanctuary policies, including New York City and Boston. The Boston case, filed on September 4, 2025, alleged that the city's rules interfered with federal immigration enforcement. Boston officials disputed the attack and defended the city's approach. So the obstacle course added a courtroom tunnel, a press conference trampoline, and a mayoral podium that squeaked every time anyone said, "jurisdiction." Then a federal judge in California blocked parts of the administration's effort to deny or condition federal funds for sanctuary jurisdictions. AP reported in April 2025 that the judge said portions of the executive orders were unconstitutional. Later reporting said the protection was extended to more cities and counties. This is where the obstacle course became truly American. Every time one gate closed, another gate opened, but it opened directly into another hearing. The family-shaped paper dolls looked at the map. The map looked like a board game designed by a committee that had never met a human being. Next came asylum, the part of the course where the rules are supposed to decide who may ask for protection. The administration tried to limit parts of the asylum path, including policies connected to processing at the border. Courts pushed back on some efforts, while other cases kept moving. Reuters reported that the Supreme Court agreed in November 2025 to review a dispute over the government's power to limit asylum claim processing at ports of entry. Translation for the puppet theater. The tiny gate was so controversial that the highest tiny bench agreed to inspect the hinge. Nobody applauded the hinge. It had become very powerful. Then came detention. The administration pushed for more detention and removal capacity. While advocates and local officials warned about due process, family separation, and community fear. The policy cannon fired paperwork confetti. The paperwork confetti became a maze. Inside the maze, every hallway had a different label: arrest priority, detainer request, removal order, asylum appointment, court backlog, appeal, funding condition. A person trying to understand the system needed a law degree, a calendar, a translator, and possibly a tiny snack. There was also a customer service bell. It did not summon help. It summoned another form. The form asked whether the applicant had already attached the form proving the form was attached. This was considered efficient by exactly one clipboard. The administration framed the crackdown as restoring control and enforcing the law. Opponents framed it as overreach that treated entire communities like suspicious paperwork. The satire is not that immigration law is simple. It is that powerful people kept pretending the course was just a straight line with a helpful arrow. It was not a straight line. It was a miniature obstacle course where the arrows occasionally sued each other. At City Hall, the local trust puppet tried to keep residents talking to police, schools, and hospitals. At the federal booth, the enforcement puppet insisted that cooperation was not optional. At the courthouse, the judge puppet kept tapping a gavel and reminding everyone that even a crackdown has to fit inside the Constitution. The gavel was very small. The constitutional questions were not. That is why the story keeps passing through courts. Executive power may be loud, but it still has to walk through doors built by statutes, judges, and constitutional limits. Sometimes the door opens. Sometimes the door says, "Not today." Sometimes the door opens only for the part of the policy that remembered to bring its legal homework. Then came the public argument, because no modern obstacle course is complete without everyone shouting from a different platform. One side said sanctuary policies protect dangerous people. The other said mass enforcement makes ordinary families afraid to step outside. Both arguments were flattened into slogans before anyone could say procedural due process. The slogans bounced around the set like beach balls at a very tense picnic. Meanwhile, the paper dolls still had appointments, families, jobs, hearings, and lives that did not fit into a lower third graphic. Cable panels inflated like parade balloons. Social media turned every complicated legal term into a tiny hammer. The immigrant paper dolls kept waiting at the next checkpoint. This is the trap in the story. When politics turns immigration into a performance course, every actor gets a prop. The administration gets a cannon. The city gets a shield. The court gets a gavel. The internet gets a scoreboard. The people inside the system get a number and a folding chair. The chair was not villainous. It was simply tired. It had heard every speech and still could not tell anyone which window was correct. By the end, the obstacle course had become so elaborate that the sign at the exit had to be changed. It no longer said, "Welcome to the process." It said, "Please consult the latest injunction before using this door." And somewhere behind the tiny foam wall, the clipboard smiled the gentle smile of a system that had turned human uncertainty into a group project. America had not built a path. It had built a maze, put a finish line on wheels, and asked everyone to be grateful for the signage. The tiny paper dolls did not need a miracle. They needed a door that stayed in one place long enough for the rules to mean what the sign said. The clipboard, naturally, requested that complaint in triplicate.